Hello and welcome to the Pharma Forum podcast. I'm your host, Jonah Comstock. Pharma companies have a mission to help their customers stay healthy, but what about their employees? Nearly 1 in 4 adults lives with a diagnosable mental health condition, and for a company this means a quarter of their workforce might need help and support around their mental and behavioral health, an area that can be subject to no small amount of stigma. My guest today is Jamie Eden, SVP Human Resources at Boehringer Ingelheim, the world's largest private pharmaceutical company. He's going to speak with me about what BI is doing to support the mental health of its workers. Welcome to the show, Jamie.
Thanks, Jonah. Good to be with you.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with Boehringer.
I've spent my whole career in human resources, and 15 years or so ago, I got a phone call from a recruiter. I knew nothing at the time about the pharmaceutical industry. I certainly knew nothing about Boehringer Ingelheim at that time. But coincidentally, I was at the time my father had just suffered a stroke and was receiving a medication that Boehringer had recently launched, and so that certainly piqued my interest. And having joined the company 15 years ago, there is something very special about the industry, about this company, and the opportunity to help bring life-saving medications to patients in need is something that really is aligned with my purpose.
So you guys pitched us way back in February about sort of some changes you had made around how you were handling mental health support, mental health benefits in the company. So maybe give me a little bit of a rundown on that. And since we have sort of the gift of now being a few months down the road, you can also tell me a little bit about how it's been going.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, I think the first thing, Jonah, I would say is that the steps that we have taken, and maybe more importantly, the steps we will take in the future, are really based on a fundamental belief that mental health is just as important as physical health. This is probably the main reason that we recently partnered with a company called Spring Health to upgrade the experience for our employees in being able to access confidential, innovative resources to help them with their mental well-being. So for us, this has been a really great success so far. We're not declaring victory. We know that we can continue to improve the offering. We already have some ideas for next year about how we make that even more accessible to our employees and to their family members. But what we love about the platform and the services within it is that it really provides proven, personal, and more importantly, precise interventions for those that need them. And that's something we're proud of. And so far, at least, the feedback that we've had from our employees has been extremely positive. In particular, and I'm sure you'll also know this, but of course, during the pandemic, I think the realization about mental well-being became much more significant, and the ability for people to access resources was frankly quite difficult. So one of the things we love about this platform is it provides much faster access to interviews and resources and therapy sessions for employees. We provide up to 8 sessions per year, and they're available in an average of 2 days, which when you speak, or at least when I speak with some of my colleagues in other companies, that is really a differentiator for us.
So what are kind of all the tenets of the offering? Is it mostly like teletherapy? Is there sort of more like asynchronous app things involved? Walk me through it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a very broad spectrum. So anything from simple mindfulness, maybe to coaching, one-on-one or group coaching, all the way through inpatient treatment as necessary. That's what we like about it. It is that full spectrum. And I would say the other piece is they really take a data-based approach so that people can truly be matched with the care that they need, which I think historically, at least with other mental health resources that I've seen, that has always been the challenge. You know, people spend a lot of time trying to figure out and try to get to the right person. Here, I think we and Spring have done a nice job of making that as efficient as possible so that people get the care that they need as quickly as they can.
So even at a healthcare company, it can be really hard to acknowledge you have an issue with mental health and to ask for help, especially if it involves asking for help at work. That's a pretty common kind of issue here is just the stigma of seeking help. So I suppose I have a kind of a two-part question. One part is how does your offering and the platform uh, support kind of privacy and discretion and people only sharing as much as they need to share with their supervisor or whoever at work. And also more of a culture question, I guess, around BI and sort of how this offering fits into building a healthy culture around mental health and that sort of thing.
Yeah, maybe the first part, let me take that. Certainly the offering, I mean, we were extremely stringent in ensuring the highest levels of confidentiality and data protection associated with the Spring Health platform, and we're very comfortable that Spring takes that responsibility just as seriously as we take that responsibility. So I also believe our employees definitely, we have a long history of providing benefits that are both rich but also ensure confidentiality. And so our employees trust and keeping that trust intact for us is critical. And that's why throughout the discussions with Spring, we were very much reassured about that and remain so. I think on the second part to the question around culture, for me, one of the key lessons we've learned as an organization is that focusing on your own mental health is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of courage. It's a sign of hope. And I've made it a point to prioritize my own well-being using the resources that we have available to us. I've also, where appropriate, shared with my team and the broader organization my experience with mental well-being. So, for example, I've learned a lot that your mental health changes over time, and it's at least in my case been influenced strongly by events in my life, which I think seems like an obvious point. But for example, I lost my mum in December, and beyond the grief that I experienced at that time, I began to notice there were occasions where I felt distracted. I found it hard to focus, and these may seem like small things, but I began to imagine if during that time maybe I'd lost my job or maybe I had significant financial challenges. These are the types of events I think we all experience. And I've become not just more aware, but I've been more conscious about talking about how those things have contributed to at least my own mental well-being. I think sharing stories is an important motivator for people, and I'm not shy about sharing how I use my time off and the fact that playing around a golf or going for a hike or just simply taking time away from the office for me is critical to maintaining that balance. So I think it is a cultural journey, Jonah. I don't think there's a single act that suddenly changes people's comfort level with talking about mental health. But for me, it's important to, again, appropriately share how those resources are important to me and have, more importantly, helped me be a better person and be a better leader.
That's really, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think about um, historically, I think there's been this idea that there's a mental health. It's like almost a binary, right? Either you're sick or you're well. Either things are bad enough that you need to go to therapy or they're not. And I think one of the gifts of the last few years of COVID and everything is this idea that your mental wellness can be sort of like your physical fitness, or it's there's a maintenance phase to it. It's sometimes you just have to check in with someone and try to be living your best life, not just not being sick, right?
Oh, no, I couldn't agree more. Maybe this is a strange thing to say, but one of the benefits, I think, of the pandemic, at least for me personally, but I've also heard similar reflections from others, is that we've become much more in touch with our mental well-being. I know for me, the isolation of not being able to be out and about with people, and I'm an introvert, by the way, but for me, that was pretty daunting. And there were times when it was really affecting how I was feeling about myself, how optimistic I was. And I've always said that self-awareness and self-reflection are probably the two most important leadership capabilities. What I've learned post-pandemic is they're also such important qualities to have to really keep in touch with my mental health, my physical health, and react to those reflections when, for example, I might feel down, or I might have had something happen in my personal life that has affected me. So yeah, I do think those things have become much more prominent in certainly in my mind, but also in the minds of others, which I think is a good thing.
So, I know one challenge we talked about a little bit is stigma. Another that's going on right now with mental health and behavioral health is just supply, right? The supply of therapists. You know, the idea of kind of how do we scale mental health now that there are so many people asking for it and needing it. How do you think about that, and how is kind of Spring Health thinking about that, as you know, as the world changes, just maybe as your workforce grows, all those sorts of things?
Yeah, great question, Jonah. And actually, I was in New York City maybe 9 months ago, participating in a panel, sort of a roundtable discussion of my peers from different companies on exactly this topic. And we were all sort of lamenting the fact that in a post-pandemic world, the availability of therapists is really a problem. And we were seeing lag times in employees being able to get the help that they need. I think that has eased a little bit, and certainly with Spring Health, the feedback that we've received from our employees is that that is not currently an issue. I do frankly still worry a little bit that longer term, if the supply of therapists doesn't match the demand for their utilization, that imbalance will continue to be a problem. I don't really have a great answer for that, but in the conversations we have with Spring Health, this is a very significant topic, and I know they and presumably their competitors and other companies that provide similar services are very much focused on.
So, providing for your employees' mental health, mental well being, obviously, it's the right thing to do, but there also is probably a bottom line argument there, right? A productivity argument. And so I'm curious, sort of, what are some of the KPIs? How do you measure sort of whether this investment is helping the business, so that you can sort of justify it and as a continuing program?
No, good question. I think we're still figuring out how to best do that. I mean, to your earlier question around confidentiality, we are extremely careful in how we report aggregate data on utilization of Spring Health's resources. Clearly, we want to understand that program to make sure it's delivering what we want it to for our employees. At the same time, the need to protect the health information of our employees is always going to be the priority. Right now, of course, we're looking at access. We're looking at things like how long is it taking on average for an employee or a family member to get an appointment scheduled through the app. We're also honestly using a lot of anecdotal data. So we get and continue to receive positive feedback from our employees on how they are experiencing the platform and the resources that that platform provides. And I think as we get more experience with Spring Health, because we are still a relatively early adopter, although it's interesting when we talk to them, they tell us, yes, you're an early adopter in terms of you haven't had our service for perhaps many years, but at the same time, your employees are using it as if that benefit has been in place for a long time. And I think that even that is an interesting data point, because yes, it tells us that it's easy to use and access, which is great, but it also sort of reminds me, at least, yes, we think this is an innovative solution for our employees, but it's beyond innovative, it's critical, because people are using it at a rate that exceeds the typical usage for a new benefit or resource being made available.
Yeah, that's interesting. It speaks to your culture, but it also speaks to the culture, right?
I think so. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'd almost wonder, and I'm sure you don't have data on this, but you know, in terms of anecdotally, do you see a generational breakdown? Do you see that the new young people coming into workforce, the Gen Zers, the millennials, are more prone to take you up on this, or is it kind of across the board? Because I know people talk about that stigma evolving on generational lines.
Yeah, I honestly haven't seen the data internally on demographic utilization for our employees. I can tell you as a dad to two Gen Z kids, I notice a much higher level of comfort for them and also their friends to talk about this topic than certainly I had at that age as a Gen Xer. And I suspect that pattern is probably also replicated in companies with different demographics. As we know, we have 5 generations in the workforce now. But our goal is to make sure that it's not just one demographic group that understands it and is utilizing it. We really want to use your term, kind of destigmatize this and really highlight the fact this is an act of self-love to access this type of resource and benefit. This is not something to be embarrassed about, far from it. It's something really to be proud of. And every opportunity I get to share that view, I certainly take.
Let me ask you another kind of corporate question. Because we do have a lot of listeners who are executives at pharma companies or who work in the ranks. When you decided to have a benefit like this, what was the process like to choose a vendor? What were some of the criteria you were looking for, and how did you land on Springhouse?
Yeah, I think one thing we learned early on is this space is rapidly, maybe exploding is too stark of a term, but there's a lot happening, a lot of new companies, a lot of consolidation among providers, because I think there's a realization that this is truly a need. So we experienced what I would say is a number of providers that we included in our RFP process that were really, really solid. And the other thing that I noticed was pretty much everybody that we spoke to talked about their existing offerings, but more importantly, talked about the work that they're doing to improve that and some of the assumptions and ideas that they had to further evolve it to address not just current mental health needs, but the mental health needs that they saw based on data in the future. For us, that was a key decision. We really wanted to partner with an organization that was not just ready to deliver today, but was much more importantly thinking about how to scale that offering, how to bring in new innovations, how to make it easier, how to leverage technology and mobile to reach as many employees as possible. These were for us key criteria. I mean, obviously, we also looked at sort of the financial security of those providers as well, and what have you. But I would say it was mainly around innovation, scale, and technology. Those were key aspects for us.
Thinking about innovation, let me throw you a little a little curveball. What if any role do you think sort of these generative AI chatbots have to play in mental health, mental well-being going forward?
Yeah, it's a controversial question. I agree with you, Jonah. I do think there is a role to play for AI and generative AI to play in this space. It obviously has to be extremely well governed and carefully managed and regulated, probably to a large degree. But even if you think about engaging any type of platform like this, for that provider to get you the access to the care that you need, they need information. They need to know about you so that they can match you to the right resource. And yes, you can provide that through an intake form or through a conversation. But I think we've seen in other fields how efficient that process can become with technology. And so I don't think we should be scared of it. I think we should certainly make sure that it is regulated and managed, but I am pretty convinced that anything that makes it easier and faster for people to get the care that they need is a benefit.
Great. What haven't I asked you about that you're passionate about around this topic, or that you're excited to talk about? Or what have we talked about that you'd like to talk about some more?
I don't know that there's anything too specific. Maybe one thing that I could offer is part of our commitment to the mental health of our employees is also coming from our commitment to the health of society. For example, we are actively researching and developing innovative treatments specifically to address mental health conditions. That's not a therapeutic area that we have a rich history in. We are, as you may know, built on a really strong respiratory franchise, and we've subsequently expanded into other therapeutic areas. And we continue to make huge contributions to patients with unmet medical needs today. But we are specifically targeting mental health conditions that we think we can help people with. And I think that gives us at least the opportunity when we're talking internally with our employees about their own mental health. Maybe that's an additional element that we have in our favor that normalizes the discussion, I would say, which I realize not every company has, and maybe that's a little bit of an advantage for us. And we obviously have a workforce in the US of 9,000 people who understand the importance of health, be it physical health and mental health. So we have an educated workforce. We have a workforce that is passionate about this topic. These are probably things that help us in driving engagement and access to those resources that maybe a retail company or a logistics company doesn't naturally have. But we don't take that for granted. We continue to educate. We continue to really help our employees understand what is available to them, because we make a big financial commitment to providing benefits that are really top notch for our employees.
That's a really interesting point, and it is something I was thinking about asking earlier. What uniquely as a pharma company, makes this either important or different to implement. And when we think about if you were a hospital system, obviously they have very unique needs around supporting the mental health of their employee. There's huge burnout problems in the healthcare world. Pharma workers, I would say mostly, are a little more removed from that firsthand experience of healthcare that can be so draining and traumatic. But at the same time, you've got sales reps who are in hospitals. You've got a lot of people probably who are in it because of their own patient stories and experiences with these conditions. So it's interesting to think about, what are the reasons why a pharma company should be leading here?
Yeah, no, you make a great point. And obviously, you're right. We have many employees that are in care settings on a daily basis that are seeing them firsthand, that are talking to healthcare professionals and understanding the challenges that exist within the system. We also have scientists in labs who are dedicated to finding solutions that they know maybe won't even be able to help people for 10 plus years from now. But that realization that we have the opportunity to change lives through those healthcare settings that you described, I think is what really motivates us and does probably give us an advantage when talking about a topic like this. But at the same time, it's a topic that is so important that my encouragement to whatever industry somebody is working in, this is such an important facet. And until you experience either a physical health or a mental health challenge, it's been easy for me in the past to perhaps neglect my mental health. And I've learned over the last several years that that's just not something that is sustainable.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's kind of all I have. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, Jonah, I'd just like to thank you, because elevating the importance of this topic, having a meaningful discussion around mental health is not easy, but I think it's critical. We know that change happens by conversation and really normalizing how we talk about mental health. You talked about 1 in 4 people living with a mental illness. I think the number is over 1 billion people worldwide suffering from some type of mental health condition. And this is a growing crisis. I think it's a crisis that requires solutions that are innovative, that are accessible, and that really help at an individual level with that situation. So this is what motivates us. This is why I love talking about this topic, and more importantly, love the responsibility that I have to bring resources and benefits to our employees and their family members. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all of your insights, Jamie. Yeah, I think there is, I wouldn't even call it an irony, but there's an interesting point here in a pharma company sort of explicitly acknowledging that this is not a problem that's solved exclusively with pharmaceuticals, with pills. You know, the importance of all of the aspects of the care spectrum to really manage mental health.
One of the solutions that we're currently exploring to help people with mental health conditions is actually not just a pill. It's also sort of a wraparound. How do we provide wraparound care through digital means? So that's how we think about this challenge as well from a business perspective.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jamie. Really appreciate you making the time to join me today, and good luck with the program. I hope to hear more success stories as it continues to roll out.
My pleasure. Thanks for the time, Jonah.
That concludes this episode of the Pharma Forum podcast. You can find more information about this episode, including a download link and information about other installments in the series at pharmaforum.com/podcast. The Pharma Forum podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher, and Podme, where you can find and subscribe by searching for Pharma Forum. And don't forget to visit our website, where you can sign up for daily news and analysis bulletins, and to follow us on Twitter at PharmaForum. Thanks for listening.